What's up everybody, welcome back to another video. 0 mile ADV. We had a bit of spring here on the western slope. It was really warm. I actually got to ride the Harley to the gym a few times. The dirt was still too wet and muddy. It gets really clay out here and you can get stuck. So I haven't done a lot of dirt riding recently, but it was really warm. Back in full on winter. Actually had a powder today, went skiing today, actually in a decent amount of snow. So winter's back in full swing. But March is just around the corner, and so this video is for all of you that are thinking about buying a motorcycle. You're new to motorcycling. This is 0 Mile ADV, a true beginner's guide to adventure motorcycling from a beginner's perspective. And so if I were to go back a couple of springs ago, when I was about this time when I was starting to pick and figure out which motorcycle I wanted to buy as the weather started to get warmer, what are the 3 things I would consider looking at getting my first ADV bike? So with that, let's get into it. But first, if you've been following this channel at all, you know I have been working to build a motorcycle apparel company, also called 0 Mile. We have a website up right now, 0mileadv.com. There's nothing really on there yet, so we just have had the website built for a while, just so that we have the age of the domain, if that makes sense. But you can go there, download our free BDR checklist, which will also get you on the email list, so that when our stuff actually comes out, you can be one of the first few people to order it, because it is all custom made. We are not white labeling anything. We have our own patterns, our own ideas, our own everything. So if you want to be the first people, and we're doing a small run first, because it is just cheaper, and I don't have the cash flow to risk a huge 1,000-piece order. So if you want to be one of the first people to get your hands on 0 Mile ADV clothing, go download our free BDR checklist, get ready for the BDR, and you'll be one of the first people to get the opportunity to pre-order the things that you want so you can get them before they run out and we have to reorder. So with that, let's get into the video. If I were to go back, and this time a couple years ago, looking at my first adventure motorcycle, were a couple things I wish I would have thought about and how would I go about it differently. Number 1 would be choose your sacrifice. So what do I mean by that? Choose your sacrifice. When you're buying an ADV bike, they're good at a lot of things, but not perfect at anything, because they're kind of a do-it-all. They're like the SUV of motorcycles. So depending upon the bike you get, it's going to lean one way or the other. So what type of rider do you want to be? When I first got my motorcycle, I was I wanted to do light dirt road. I never really imagined wanting to do any technical trails. A couple years later, I did a 100-mile single track day in Moab, which I never imagined I would be doing. So if I could go back, also knowing myself, when I first got into mountain biking, I was I'm gonna do only blue trails, and then there was this trail called the Hogback, and it's a double black trail, and it became my favorite trail. So I always to kind of push the technical and the harder rides, and so I should have known I probably would have wanted to get into some more technical riding as I got more into it. So I maybe wouldn't have gotten the 1290 Super Adventure S to start. I might have gotten the R, something a little bit more off-road capable, so I could have pushed a little bit harder. So yeah, choose your sacrifice. And really with ADV bikes, it's do you want more off-road oriented or more road oriented? The bigger the bike, the better it's going to be on the road. If you're going to do a lot of long trips, maybe you live somewhere where you're basically in an urban jungle and it takes a long time to get to any dirt. Go big. I would get a big bike because it's going to be more comfortable getting out there. Well, depending on how hard the trails again that you're going to ride. So where do you want to sacrifice? Do you want more on-road comfort, more creature comforts, or do you want better off-road riding? You absolutely can ride a BDR on a 500cc bike, a Norden, a Husqvarna 501e, I think is what they are. You could easily ride, or KTM 500, you could easily ride it. The road riding portion of it is going to suck. Now, can you do a BDR and a big GS? Absolutely. Those bikes are absolutely amazing. As I've talked about my BDR journey, 2 guys rocked GSs and they absolutely crushed it. So you can really do a lot of technical stuff on bigger bikes too, and you can do road on smaller bikes, but pick your sacrifice. What kind of rider do you want to be, or plan on being, or trying to achieve to be, and what are you willing to sacrifice for the better ability on one of those 2 spectrum? Number 2 is you're also kind of limited by local availability. At the time when I was buying my bike, it was still kind of in the midst of weird COVID pandemic style, like there's still a lot of like supply issues, and demand was high because people were working from home, and so a lot of things like the motorcycle market kind of also got like a little interesting there, and getting inventory was weird, and so I was like kind of limited to certain bikes and types and like kind of waiting. I also started looking at bikes before I actually took my motorcycle safety course and had my license, so I had time to really think, so that once I got my license I knew like what my budget was, what bike I was going to get, and where I was going to go. So really you're kind of limited to local selection, because I think you should go check them out, get a chance to like at least sit on them, get your hands on them, etc. And then that will lead me into number three. Number three, which I think is probably one of the better things to think about once you've kind of considered all of those other two options, you know, like what's available in your market, what are you willing to sacrifice? Then once you've kind of narrowed it down to a few bikes, I would really consider seat height. When you are a new rider, I think seat height is probably more important than anything, because adventure bikes are going to be tall overall. Some bikes are better at handling the seat height better than others. So why is this important, do I think? A, because just when you're getting comfortable cruising around, if you're new to motorcycles like I was, just one footing your bike is kind of scary and it becomes hard. I actually knew that ADV bikes were tall, so like even in my MSF course and all the stops, I was just practicing trying to get practice using 1 foot, because I could drop their bike and it has all the protection, so it wasn't a big deal. So, you know, like I kind of had that in mind. And so when I bought my KTM Super 1290 Super Adventure S, I really chose that bike for a lot of reasons, but one thing is that it was really the seat height, and it made it really easy to touch the ground on a big bike, and it wasn't very wide, and it was balanced really well, so it stood up really well. All those things kind of led to my decision, but I think seat height is really, really important. For example, if you want more of a middleweight bike and you're not so much worried about the engine braking, which I've talked about maybe, I think the Tiger 900 Rally Pro does an amazing job of like really getting you in the bike instead of being so much on top of the bike, and has really great seat height, because once you get off-road in any situation, putting your foot down or trying to balance or whatever is a lot easier the closer your feet are to the ground. Now, if you're a super tall guy and you're not 5'9", which is probably pretty standard, 5'9", 5'10", you probably don't really have to worry about it. But if you start looking at bikes like the GSA, it is going to have the sport suspension, and that bike, that seat is wide, and it's just harder to get on. The Norden 901, it is, especially the Expedition, taller, the better suspension, and that seat is super wide. It's really hard to get your feet down, and so like those bikes just don't really handle seat height that great. Same with like the KTM 1290 Super Adventure R, also taller. The 890 R and Rally are also very tall bikes. However, they do a really good job of like narrowing the seat, and so you can get your feet down easier. Another great bike is like the Suzuki V-Strom 800DE. It's a Suzuki, it should run forever. But that bike also does a great job of like being able to get your feet down, and so if you want a more middleweight bike, I feel like you can really push that bike pretty hard. There's actually a really cool video of a guy that really built out an 800DE into like, he needed this massive Baja race, and he really built out a super cool bike. But like another good option, there are a lot of options. If you have questions about any of those bikes, leave them in the below. You know, based on my feedback, I'm happy to tell you what I know. If you haven't, hit the subscribe button. It really helps the channel. It's free, and it just helps grow the channel. So those are my top 3 things I would think about if I had to go back into spring or a couple of years ago when I was buying my first adventure bike. A, what am I willing to sacrifice? Should have known at the time I was going to want to get into more heavier off-roading, so I maybe should have sacrificed on-road ability, so I could have pushed my off-road ability a little bit more. 2, you're kind of limited to your local selection, so start looking around Facebook Marketplace. What dealers do you have in your area? What brands are available? And then you can start narrowing down like what they have that fit into where you want the bike to be. What side of the performance side do you want? More dirt or more road oriented? Or are you trying to find like the perfect middle balance? And then last but not least, if you are of standard height, look at seat height. I think it also probably wouldn't hurt if you are, even if you are tall, and you can, with a lower seat height, you're going to be able to flat foot both feet, and it just makes managing the bike when you're first learning so much easier. So with that is it. Be sure to check out zeromileadv.com. We're hopefully building some really great clothing that you guys will like, and we want your feedback so we can produce amazing apparel and right now we're starting small and we want to keep this thing small. And so we really want feedback and we really want it to be community driven. So all of you are super important part and piece to that. So with that, until next time, stay safe out there.